Imagine if we all woke up to headlines in the morning newspaper saying, breakthrough discovery will eliminate 90% of all diabetes. Clearly, whoever came up with that would deserve a Nobel Prize. It would be the talk of the day, it would be on every news show. Same would be true if the following week we had an announcement that someone discovered a way to prevent 60% of all cancer. This stuff would be worthy of the Nobel Prize. Well, we're sitting on it right now. It doesn't require a great medical advance. It requires putting to use the knowledge we already have.
Americans are sick. Over 130 million of us are suffering from chronic disease.
We have in this country an epidemic of chronic illnesses clearly linked to diet. There's plenty of scientific evidence. This is not a subject of debate.
We need to do something to turn this epidemic around, and we can, but the answer is not going to come from pills and procedures. The answers have to be found in treating the causes of these epidemics.
We all know that what you eat can give you these diseases. But what if you could reverse these diseases with diet too? Is that possible?
It's a very, very hard sell. Because what do we got? We've got, against us, we've got industry, we've got the government, and sadly, often the medical profession itself.
Sounds like an uphill battle. Just ask Charles, John, and Garnet. These three are going to try to reverse their chronic diseases by eating only the healthy stuff. And this is Charles. Here's Charles and his family on their summer vacation. A little camera challenged at the moment. Oh, there's Charles's feet, and he's going to take us on a little trip here. Oh, there's Charles's family, and his wife, and his two kids. Give a little wave. And there are the kids, in funny little masks. And there's Charles. Life is pretty good for Charles.
One day I just wasn't feeling very well. I went to the ER, and my blood pressure was 250 over 155.
250 over 155? That's not normal blood pressure.
In my mind, I just thought, oh, he's got a little high blood pressure. We'll just go on. And then he went for the stress test, and two of them came back not good.
I ended up having a catheterization, and that's when and when I went into that catheterization, I should say, I totally thought that there was not going to be any problem in my heart. I was convinced in my own mind that there was no blockages, there was no problem.
The doctor came out after forever, it seemed, with the results. I actually didn't understand what he was saying until he pulled out the diagram of Charles's heart and showed me where all the blockages were. And that's when that's when I knew that it wasn't good, and that maybe we waited too long. But with my kids being there, I had to pretend like this is just what we expected. Everything is fine. Daddy's going to be fine. You know, we don't have anything to worry about.
When I first heard that Johnny was sick, I thought everything was over.
I was 100% blocked in one artery and 92% in another and 89, or I don't know, I had a lot of blockage.
That's a lot of blockages. How does that happen?
I was having lunch at Kentucky Fried Chicken 3 times a week, and the other 2 days I was eating 1 or 2 slices of pizza, and I really didn't care, but that might have been what did me in. So I miss that Kentucky Fried Chicken.
The problem with the American diet is that we eat a variety of foods, but most of them are bad.
So what does all this quality food do to the old ticker?
And we have a young person come into the emergency room dead on arrival, drinking and driving. And we do an autopsy, we find that these 18-year-olds already have 15 to 20% narrowing of the coronary arteries.
The disease is ubiquitous. Even in the 16-year-old women, you see coronary disease in the right coronary artery.
77% of Korean War vets had heart disease? And they were only 22? Wow. But that was a long time ago. Certainly things have changed since then.
Despite all of our advances in technology and cardiology, it remains the #1 killer in the United States.
My grandfather owned a slaughterhouse. My whole life growing up, we ate the best cuts of meat pretty much every night of the week.
When I first met Charles, I didn't even realize he had high blood pressure. And he's had high blood pressure, I think, since he's been like 16. And that's just always how I knew him. But it never stopped him from doing stuff. And I don't think he'd really know that he was sick.
They found that I had a 95% blockage and a 90% blockage on the right side of my heart with multiple 30s and 40s.
The surgery wasn't going to be easy. It was at a place where there was a hook. They didn't know whether they could do a stent, and his cardiologist wasn't even the one that was going to do it. They needed to call in a specialist. They were talking about letting a branch of his heart die and let him have a heart attack. My head was spinning.
It really is a tough situation. John and Kathy didn't know what to do either.
I don't know, when I first was thinking about not having the bypass that was recommended, I mean, that's a pretty serious decision you got to make. And my sister thought I was going to die in a week if I didn't have the operation. That's how bad she thought it was. As one of my friends said, I told him I was trying to get out of the bypass operation. He says, the only way you're going to get out of the bypass is in a wooden box.
You think, is he going to die on the table? Is it going to be a success? Is he going to be worse than he is now? I mean, he's gone all this time and nothing's happened. And then all the oh God, what will I do without him? I mean, it just, everything's in a flash and then it stands still. You don't know what way to turn.
I had my whole family behind the operation. I was really bucking everybody. And you were kind of on the fence. You didn't know which way to go.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. But you told me that whatever I decided, you'd be behind me, which was fine. So.
They wanted to get it going. We were going to schedule it. We want you in there.
I said I wanted a second opinion.
Right.
And so what he did was he took my picture, he walked across the room to another cardiologist sitting at a table and showed him the paper, and I could see him talking, and he showed him and they were nodding, and then he came back to me and said, okay, I just got your second opinion. He says what I say.
I called his doctor up and I told his doctor that he couldn't have the surgery, that he was scared as hell, and could we do something and calm him down. So they gave me Valium for it. I put it in his Coke. They gave me 2.
I was a nervous wreck, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
My father had problem with his heart, but it never had like that. Never had a disease, but when he died, we found out that he died from a heart attack.
My father's had 2 heart attacks, and my grandfather's also had 2 heart attacks.
My father died from it, and heart disease, and I think my grandmother did too.
Heart disease is inherited, right? Just like whether you have small feet or big feet, whether you're tall or short, have good vision or bad vision. When it comes down to it, it's all in the genes, right?
Well, I keep telling people, don't go to your parents' grave and yell at them about your heart disease, because that's one small factor is your family history, but leave your dead parents alone and take care of yourself.
Some people have probably overrated genetics as a major factor in chronic disease. We now understand that genetics is probably like the gun, but lifestyle is the trigger.
There are populations around the world that get virtually no diabetes, almost never get heart disease, and they're not that genetically different from populations that get lots of diabetes and lots of heart disease.
People who move from one risk area of the world, let's say it's low risk for certain disease, to a country where the risk is much higher, they get the risk of the country to which they move without changing their genes. So Japanese move into the United States, for example, and beginning to adopt the American diet. All of a sudden, their breast cancer rates, their colon cancer rates, and heart disease rates start going up within a generation or two as they change their diet. So it's not the genes, it's the control of the expression of these genes. They have to be expressed. And that's where nutrition comes into play. Nutrition controls the expression of the genes.
So nutrition controls the expression of genes. Who knew? This is Dr. Esselstyn. He was a prominent cancer surgeon at the Cleveland Clinic.
My areas of special interest were breast disease and thyroid and parathyroid surgery, and I was chairman of our breast cancer task force and head of the section on thyroid and parathyroid surgery.
But all that wasn't enough for Dr. Esselstyn. Once he started to read about cultures where there's no heart disease, he wanted to learn about that too.
We have so many examples throughout the globe of civilizations where coronary artery disease is non-existent.
In 1985, when he learned that some nations have no cardiovascular disease, and it's not because of some genetic gift, Dr. Esselstyn had an idea.
Might it not be interesting to take patients who already have coronary artery disease and see if we can't get them to eat the same types of plant-based foods that we see in those nations where the disease does not exist?
Dr. Esselstyn was going to try to prove scientifically that eating a diet based on plants could reverse heart disease. So Dr. Esselstyn got 24 sick patients. Failed bypass surgeries, failed angioplasties, medication wouldn't work, and they just didn't want any more procedures. He put them on this diet. The patients knew it would be tough, but heck, they didn't want to die either.
None of the previous doctors, before I went to Dr. Esselstyn, really even asked me about my diet or anything related to that, except I would say they told me to reduce salt intake.
I bother to ask my patients what their typical day would be. So give me your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I ask them where their weak point is. Is it 10 p.m.? Because if 10 p.m. is when they start to really take in their calories, that's where we'll spend 2 extra minutes bothering to say, let's do carrots instead of ice cream and cookies.
My cardiologist said, go on a Mediterranean diet, and gave me a slip of paper what a Mediterranean diet was. And I said, okay, that's not a lot of help. And so I proceeded to not do it.
On the day that we were supposed to meet with Dr. Esselstyn, we were staying in a hotel, and we had already started modifying our diet a little bit because I had been talking to him on the phone. But when we went down to leave, they were having a breakfast buffet at the hotel. And this consisted of bacon, sausage, eggs, all the things that would have been a slam dunk for me. And I looked at the food and I basically just, you know, I actually started to cry.
No, 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 you can't have it. No, but I want it. No, yeah, I want it. No, you can't have it. I want it.
The federal government has been involved in nutrition advice since the early 1900s. At first, the focus was on making sure Americans got enough nutrition. And that really was the theme through World War II and beyond.
Eventual victory in this war may depend on what we eat. And given the national will to do it, we can build here in America a tougher, more vigorous nation. A nation with better morale and greater strength of mind than the world has ever known. Food can build a new America.
But then the focus started to change. It was clear that Americans were getting, for the most part, enough. Far too many Americans were getting too much.
And what government body was given the task of telling Americans how to eat healthier? The good old USDA.
Most people look at USDA because it has that split mission.
Part of their mandate is to promote health. The other part of their mandate is to promote American agricultural products.
So what we have in the form of the USDA is an inherent conflict of interest, right? Because we have a government agency that on one hand is designed to tell the American public how to eat, meaning setting nutrition standards. On the other hand, it's also designed to support big agribusiness. The federal government actually has a hand in certain kinds of food advertising through what are called checkoff programs. And the way this works is that each component of the food industry will put money into a fund that the federal government actually administers. And so when you see generic advertising, for example, there's a big campaign from the beef industry called Beef, It's What's for Dinner.
Gone eatin'. You'll see that sign a lot in the land of lean beef. Gone eatin' sirloin. Gone eatin' T-bone. Gone eatin' tenderloin. And nobody's sure when they'll be back from those pastures of protein, but when they are, you can bet they'll be satisfied. Discover the power of protein when you go eatin' in the land of lean beef. Beef, it's what's for dinner.
That's money that's funded through these government programs by the beef industry.
Some of the most outrageous programs were working with fast food. Amazingly enough, the federal government worked with Wendy's to produce the Cheddar Lovers Bacon Cheeseburger. And the whole goal was to sell more cheese, which it did. They worked with Subways, Taco Bell, Burger King, and other fast food chains, not for more healthful offerings, but to promote more cheese.
In 1979, the government decided to create the nation's first food pyramid. So Louise Light went to Washington to get the job done.
We had many expert groups come and give us their opinions. International researchers, medical experts, biochemical experts, public health experts, etc., and agricultural economists, all kinds of folks to inform our work. And at the end of a 2.5-year process, we were going to do something that hadn't been done before, which is to say that fruits and vegetables were the most important food group. People who ate more fruits and vegetables had less chronic disease. We had it reviewed by the Secretary's office, and when it came back to us, it wasn't the same one that we had developed. Instead of having fruits and vegetables at the bottom of our grouping of most important foods, now we had 6 to 11 servings of grain products, wheat products primarily. And wheat products didn't mean whole wheat, it meant anything made with wheat. And that was a lot of stuff. That's everything from pizza crust to bagels and white bread sandwiches and croissants. And you just figure out what could be, possibly even Oreo cookies could be in that group. And that didn't make any sense because we were trying to improve the health of the American public. And we said, if you come out with this kind of a recommendation, which is many times more than what people are eating now of grains, all you're going to do is create fatter people and people who may have more risk of diabetes. And they wouldn't listen, and they said, no, we have to do it this way.
Let's get this straight. The original idea was to make a food pyramid that would make the nation healthier. But the one they ended up with would actually make the people sicker. In the end, they didn't release that pyramid either.
And the reason they didn't release even that amended pyramid is because they were still getting grief from the meat people who kept saying any suggestion that we should eat less of something or moderate amounts of something, you're dictating to the American public how much they should eat of our good products, and we won't accept that. It was deep-sixed.
Diabetes is the major risk factor for heart disease.
Diabetes accelerates atherosclerosis, the narrowing of vessels. And so when you have diabetes, you have to worry about losing your vision, losing your hearing, losing your memory, losing your feet. It can affect the male sex organ. And people don't oftentimes realize that probably 65 to 75% of the impotence in men is related to this disease called atherosclerosis. It's a narrowing of, in this case, the penile arteries. And when you cannot sustain the blood flow because the arteries are narrowing in time, things are not working out.
We've experienced diabetes in our family with other members, and we know how serious it can be. We didn't expect anything like that would ever come to here, but it's life. It's here, so we have to deal with it.
I've been diagnosed with diabetes about a year now. I'll be honest with you, I haven't been taking the medication properly, which caused complications. I ended up in the hospital, and I really want to get off the medication.
If she can escape being a diabetic, she's looking at a much more quality life than what she's possibly looking at right now with the other physicians that they're doing, just giving her pills that that'll boost her insulin. So it's a great idea.
Just like Charles and John, Garnet wants to put the brakes on her disease and reverse it. So she goes to see Dr. Joel Furman.
The vast majority of my patients get rid of their diabetes because I say they're no longer diabetic when they're on no medication and their glucose level's in the normal range.
That's right.
It's not diabetic.
I've been through a diabetes episode for 10 years with my husband's uncle who died in my arms. So,
wow.
I went through the amputations, I've been through the dialysis. So believe me, I know firsthand the things that you're telling me, and I refuse to have
you're
that.
not even 50 years old, you're young. You have the possibility of being healthy and live a very, very long, happy and healthy life free of disease.
Okay.
If you want to have dramatic life extension to live to later years, you have to maintain your young adult weight and blood pressure and body dimensions through your whole life. That's how you live the longest time. Right? So that means your ideal weight is probably under 130 pounds.
Is it really? Think I could get there?
Yeah.
I need help because I've got to believe that too. Do you know what I mean? And I do believe that, it's changing my mind, changing my lifestyle, and I can get there, but I'm going to need help.
I got a big surprise for her. I'm going to be doing it with her. She's not alone on this, not at all.
So what exactly can Charles, John, and Garnet eat if they want to reverse their diseases?
Have yourself some nice whole grain cereal. A little little bit of pasta or whole grain bread. Now let's listen what the ducky said. A little bit of beans and legumes. Your mama always told you to eat those vegetables. Vegetables. Oh, my dear, now don't forget the fruit. Tasty. Eating healthy makes a happy family. Come on a picnic with me. Off into the sunset.
This is our first meal that I've prepared for you guys since I've started changing the way that I eat. What do you think?
It's good. Yeah, pretty good.
Oh, Sharon, this is the first time tonight that I heard you weren't going to do this with me.
Well, you know, I gave it some thought. And you know, I can go days. In fact, I go all week without eating some kind of meat, you know. Because today, all I had was the smoothie that I made for breakfast. And for lunch, I had a salad. And that was it.
But that's what you normally eat. You may eat salmon every now and then.
Exactly.
But, so that means you can do this with me. I got to have somebody. You can't do this every day. No. Somebody's going to stick with this with me. Because who's going to help me out when I have a hard time?
It'll be a big surprise who's going to help her out.
We'll see.
I went in the kitchen and got some chicken quesadillas because I was hungry.
Does that taste better?
In this country, over 20 million people now have diabetes. A baby born today has a 33% chance of becoming a diabetic in a lifetime.
If you start getting diabetes at age 8, you can imagine what's going to happen with the 20 and 30-somethings. They're all going to start to get significant disease, often heart disease. It's going to move the whole population of people with heart disease down by 2 decades.
2 decades? They'll get heart disease when they're 20. With a prediction like that, you'd think 20-somethings would take notice.
I can't take time out of my schedule to try to accommodate a diet like that. So for us, it's like...
Right now, being in college, I would rather just like spend these 4 years living in gluttony.
I don't really like beans that much. I know it's a very healthy, they tell me. Especially I'm a diabetic. I should be eating those kind of things.
I just can't go for more than several days at the most before I feel like I gotta tear into some flesh.
I just figured, oh my, fruits and vegetables for a guy that's been eating meat and whose family is, I mean, they're butchers. That's what Charles's dad did. His grandfather owned a butcher shop in Norristown.
I do not enjoy the new diet. Your mindset, you basically have to have a paradigm shift in your thinking. Eating is not really fun anymore. Eating is not, you don't sit down and enjoy a good meal like you would say before. You don't go to a good restaurant and enjoy the food.
Here we are in downtown Gettysburg.
We have some happy vacationers here enjoying some ice cream. Obviously we won't be. There's another place we're going to pass right by, O'Rourke's Family Eatery.
Okay, here we are back at the motorhome. It's now 2:40. We haven't eaten lunch because we were out doing activities all day and couldn't just run into a restaurant, so now we're back here to make our own food and have lunch.
And then head off for some more activities.
Yep, Charles and his family eat this way even when vacationing with friends.
I won't try to sugarcoat it for anyone. It's not fun. It's not something you look forward to.
Doesn't taste good.
It doesn't taste all that great, okay? But here's the thing. I'm not going to have a heart attack.
There is the other side of the argument, though. Short, happy, joyous time.
And
enjoying a lot of taste.
And you know what? And you know what? That is the choice that most people make.
I'd been a pretty hard-nosed, typical surgeon. To suddenly think that I was now looking at disease through the lens of nutrition. I think a lot of my colleagues, even though it was only a half day a week, felt that I ought to be out in the meadow with a bow in my hair and some lilacs and a violin.
Essie's work at the Cleveland Clinic was always, the doctors, nobody embraced it. And it was always awkward. And sometimes they would say really critical things behind his back, sometimes to our kids. Doctors were laughing, you know, doctor eating sticks and twigs.
We're selling sickness right now. We are absolutely selling sickness as a profession. You don't get health out of a bottle of pills. You don't get health out of a bunch of different operative procedures. I mean, I know that as a former surgeon. That is not what gives you health.
The most popular drug in the world right now is not an anti-malaria drug. It's not an anti-HIV drug. It's not an antibiotic at all. It's Lipitor. Lipitor is a cholesterol-lowering drug. It's a drug that is designed to curb the effects of dietary excess.
My brother's breakfast is probably as fatty as you can get, and doesn't seem to care. And what my brother does is just pops another statin drug and eats more fat. I don't understand it. My mother, for example, has severe cardiovascular disease. So bad, in fact, that when they tried to do a cath on her, that they couldn't go through either leg or one of her arms, and barely got through the fourth. And she still won't do it.
The thrust in this country has been to use drugs and surgery. So we spend $15 billion a year on drugs to treat high blood pressure, another $15 billion to treat high cholesterol levels. We spend about $50 billion a year on heart surgeries. It's crazy. And then tens of billions on obesity and diabetes and all these other problems, when diet could be just as effective.
Spinach, a strange weed this be. What restoreth my vitality?
To cook like this, it takes a lot more preparation time. Cutting fresh vegetables. We had friends over last night, and I made homemade pizzas, and it took me
2 hours.
2 hours just to cut the vegetables, prepare the sauce, cook them. Come on, keep going. Chickpeas are going in. Attaboy. That's it. One nice movement. Smooth. Use your muscles. Push it, push it, push it. That's nice. Hot pepper, garlic, onion, hummus. A few more. God bless you.
The funny thing is, she was actually a horrible cook. She might not like this, but
for 17 years, she was...
Easy.
There were nights when I didn't even know what kind of meat I was eating. I knew at some time it either swam, walked, or flew, but I wasn't sure what it was. And that was kind of a running joke with us. But now she has to think everything through.
Right.
So actually, the meals she makes now are a lot better, a lot of times, than the previous 17 years. So...
Thank you, I think.
Yeah, that I think worked out better.
Okay.
Garnet's been on the program for 2 months now. Let's see how she's doing.
Today we're at Bob's house, which is my sales manager, director of sales, and we do this every year. We come out, we sit in the yard, we have our meeting outside, and then the rest of the day we just spend bonding with each other. I've noticed several changes. I've lost 20 pounds. I wasn't sure what there was going to be prepared, and what I always do is just buy a salad and bring with me, and this is going to be my meal today, or this is typically what I would eat for lunch or for dinner. Sometimes I would buy it for lunch and then go home and eat the other half for dinner. So it really just consists of a garden salad with vegetables and with dressing. Dressing is one thing that I may not have, depending on where I get it from and what's in the dressing. But I'm not really worried too much if there's a little bit of oil in the dressing, because I feel that I'm compensating completely for everything else. But this is typically what I like to eat. The family fluctuates on a continuous basis. They are not sticking to the program as they said they were in the beginning, because I think that it was a little bit more difficult for them than they had anticipated. So, no, they're not following it as critically as I am. They're still eating hamburgers and French fries and chicken and bread, all of those things. I'm still barbecuing. I'm still entertaining in the backyard and cooking the items. I did eat a hamburger and a hot dog just recently, and I did not feel well after eating it. So that's probably something that I would eat on a limited basis. I'm not a fanatic about it. If I feel like I want a piece of hot dog again, I might think about it twice, but I might have it.
Oh, bacon? Oh, bacon? I love bacon. No, I love bacon.
Favorite food? General Toast chicken. Straight from the Chinese store.
Cheesesteaks.
That's original.
Great big cheesesteaks, yes, with fried onions and mayo.
It's more easily accessible to get the stuff that's made for me than it is to get the stuff that's good for me. So it's cheaper, so I tend to get that.
Eating healthy, or eating even healthy in restaurants, costs a lot of money. And the average person in the United States, whose income is like $35,000 a year, cannot eat at restaurants, quote unquote, with healthy foods and healthy options.
I think eating this way it should really end up being cheaper. If you are willing to eat beans and rice and lots of vegetables, I mean, that kind of a way to go isn't necessarily more expensive. Rice can be so fast and made so quickly, and things can be put on top of it like tomatoes and frozen corn that are good, and it will probably in the long run maybe feed more people than if you went and got enough food from a fast food place for a big family. Maybe that's not true, but I'd like to think it were.
Most people you talk to would tell you that they think this is cheaper because you're not buying meat and you're not buying a lot of the processed foods. But according to her, and I will believe her because she does it, but she says it's much more expensive.
Vegetables, peppers, when we started doing this, were upwards of $4.29, $3.89 a pound. Well, a pound is maybe 3 peppers. Well, we'll eat 12 peppers roasted at lunch. So, I mean, just because I'm not going to the meat aisle or the lunch meat aisle.
Well, and we don't.
Soy milk is
skim.
expensive. A half gallon of soy milk's $4.
And we buy all fresh vegetables.
It's more expensive.
People have wondered, why can't the fruit and vegetable farmers get subsidies too, right? Why is it that we just, the government gives all its money to the unhealthy food? It really has to do with traditionally the largest players in Washington being meat and dairy and the crops that actually go into animal feed.
And how large are those players? Well, between 1995 and 2005, the meat and dairy industry ate up almost 74% of federal food subsidies, leaving about 13% for grains, less than 11% for sugar, oil, starch, and alcohol. Nuts and legumes got less than 2%. And when you add all that up, fruits and veggies are left with a whopping 0.37%.
Fruits and vegetables simply haven't represented enough of the political clout. They just don't represent enough of the food that's produced to really be a major player when it comes to lobbying for subsidies. The sad thing is that we don't even produce enough fruit and vegetables in this country to meet the current USDA dietary guidelines. So that tells you something about our priorities and how we're even producing food.
The 70s, when Louise Light started the food pyramid. In 1992, they finally released that food pyramid with wheat there, right at the bottom. And today...
We talk a lot on this program about politics, foreign policy, the media. Sometimes it can get pretty bleak. But there's an old saying, as long as you have your health. Well, according to recent studies, you don't. But that is about to change. You see, for decades, this food pyramid has given the public a memorable icon to ignore while dipping their McRibs into their shamrock shakes. But this week, the Department of Agriculture unveiled My Pyramid, a revised design featuring vertical stripes and a stick figure on a staircase representing exercise.
Never mind, $36 billion a year that the food industry is spending to get us to eat the wrong way. The government has now created a website called My Pyramid with a stick figure. Problem solved.
A typical meal for me before the diet would have been meat, steak, hamburger, pork chops, maybe a little potato. My wife would probably make some vegetables, but I can't say that I always ate them.
I know he credits me a lot for the cooking, but if he had to do it himself,
See you later.
he would do it. I think.
I would. I would do it, but I wouldn't like
the
it.
gourmet meals, of course, that
I wouldn't like it. I would not want the responsibility
you would do
of
it.
preparing the food.
You
or
know what
dealing
you would
with it.
have? You would have cereal for breakfast,
Now, what I tell you, the way I
fruit
would do
for
it,
lunch, and cereal for dinner.
if I had to
That's
do
what
it,
you would do.
I'd hire somebody to do
Ah,
it.
there you go. Yeah, that's what you would do. No kidding.
I would. I don't know. I mean, I'd have to come up with the money somehow or be able to do it, but
I don't know. You would do it.
no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't even cook meals if I could eat regular food. To be honest with you, I just wouldn't. So I know I wouldn't do it. The only way the way I get through this is because you do all that. And if you didn't, I'd have to find somebody else to do it. So you're pretty safe to say you're staying as long as you keep as long as you keep up with that. You're
I got to make sure no one comes in here and shows me up on their fruit and vegetable cooking, or I might be outside looking in.
I feel that I would like to see everybody really thinking about dinner more than just me. It would go a long way for the support that I would get from my family would not only be that they would be willing to eat what I prepared, but would also think about trying to prepare something for me. I'm out there, I'm working all day long, and I'm constantly taking care of other things, taking care of other people, and then I come home and I have to take care of my family, and it's a little bit frustrating. Because now, I've worked all day and now I got to come home and I've got 3 people sitting there. And it's not easy enough for me to just decide on what I want to eat and fix it for my family. I have to say, okay, this is what I want to eat now. Now I have to figure out what you guys want to eat. So that makes it, that just adds another layer of stress on.
Oh, I didn't know you felt that way, but if I could drive, I would go.
You'd go get it for me, right? Right. And then maybe you could encourage Dad to do that.
I think I've lost my cooker for the night. Avery has gone into the other room. And typically exactly what I was talking about, leaving Mom to finish everything and to prepare dinner for everybody else. So I wish that would change a little bit.
I believe people know how to eat healthy, but people would rather soothe their taste buds than eat healthy.
Either I'm going to eat stuff that I enjoy eating and die as a result or not, or I won't.
I don't want to live longer if I'm not going to enjoy every day of it.
I want to eat what I want to eat, and I want to enjoy it while I'm here, so.
What if that leads to this? Wouldn't you want another option?
We all thought he was going to be gone.
And that's the pressure that you're under to get this operation done. Because you thought that would cure everything, right?
Yeah. And then he decided not to do it, and guess what? I was beside myself.
The data which we should really call the elephant in the room whenever there is a discussion or controversy about stents and bypass is that these procedures do not really prolong life.
I just watched his father go through stent, go through balloon, bypasses. None of it worked. None of it worked. And, you know, he was on dialysis 3 times a week.
Some girl.
My name is Vanessa.
You. And she knows what she wants.
Very much love. Very stimulating. She's so content.
My pleasure. You ever need any advice?
Oh, God.
Either of them.
I will be calling you. Ready? Come on, let's go upstairs. I gotta get my coat.
Bye-bye.
Today I see a little bit of you in there, Charles.
The last 10, 15 years of his life was hospitals and dialysis, and who wants that?
You can show her this years from now, Charles. Show her how Grandpa was holding her.
Look, these procedures are a stop-gap patch job. In an emergency situation when somebody is having a heart attack, a stent or a bypass operation may be absolutely life-saving. But they do nothing to treat the cause of the disease. Zero. They're treating symptoms. It's a temporary patch job.
We used to think that the arteries were just pipes, that they were simply pipes that you could look down and cholesterol would build up inside until it was eventually blocked. And we know now that that's not exactly the process.
We now estimate that only about 10 or 12% of heart attacks occur that way. Well, how do the other 88% of heart attacks occur?
So they used to think heart attacks happen this way. A blockage would get bigger and bigger until it was so big that it clogged the artery, cutting the blood flow to the heart. And that would be it. You'd have a heart attack. Actually, though, these big blockages cause only about 12% of heart attacks. That's right, most heart attacks aren't caused by big blockages. And here's why. Most heart attacks occur when plaque explodes out into the artery. The big blockages almost never explode because they have had time to form an armor-like cap, preventing all of that plaque goo made up of cholesterol, fat, calcium, and scar tissue from leaking out into the artery. Not only that, but little blood vessels have had time to grow around the big blockage, continuing the blood flow to the heart. So most of the time, it's not the big blockages that get us into trouble. It's the little plaques that are just beginning to form that are the real culprits in heart attacks. These little plaques are the cause 88% of the time. The caps over these little plaques are still forming and are fragile. And with all the blood rushing by, these little fragile caps that are keeping all of the plaque goo contained may rupture at any moment. And when they rupture, your body wants to repair the broken cap, and platelets rush into the damaged area. The plaque and platelets come together, creating a clot, and the blood can't get to the heart.
And now, here an artery suddenly is completely blocked off in a patient who never before had any symptoms of heart disease because his plaque burden wasn't large enough to give symptoms. And now suddenly we've either got a massive heart attack or sudden death.
The food and drug industries, unfortunately, have too much influence at the government level in deciding what the public gets to hear. And they have been very busy over the years in trying to confuse the American public about this. And the American public never know the difference. But when they hear something, they don't know whether it's coming from an industry-supported project or otherwise.
In 1981, Louise Light developed a nutrition course for the American Red Cross. In it, she cited scientific research that showed a link between certain foods and cancer. When a major food corporation got wind of that, they were not too happy.
I got a call one day from someone from, then it was General Foods. They owned Oscar Mayer. They had a lot of food products. They have been since bought up and have become part of Kraft Food. And at the time, they were like the number 2 or 3. And this was a gentleman who had a PhD in nutrition. I knew his name and his work. And he was also in charge of quality control for the organization. He was also a lawyer. So he had all the shticks. And he asked if he could meet with me. He was coming to town. So I went to the finest and best hotel in Washington on the appointed day. And in the lobby, I met this gentleman. We shook hands. And he said, "Would you come up to my hotel room? I want to show you something." And I thought, oops, what's this about? And I said, I don't do that kind of thing. And he said, no, it's okay. Well, we can even leave the door open. Nothing wrong. I'm married. I have a kid. We go into the elevator, and he was clutching an attaché case. And he was sweating profusely. The sweat was just pouring down his face. And we go into his room, and he sits at the edge of the bed, and I'm sitting on a little couch. And he, again, puts the attaché case on his lap. He's not letting go of it. And he looks directly at me, and he says, "I have $60,000 in this attaché case, and I want to give it to you if you will leave the word cancer out of any mention in the Red Cross course." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I suppose that's flattering, but I really don't do that. I don't take bribes. And I don't think I would do that even if it wasn't a matter of a bribe. This is what we've come up with from a scientific consensus, and it would not be appropriate to leave it out. It's information that has been developed and established. So thank you, but no thank you." And I walked out of the room. But not before he opened up the attaché case, of course, and showed me the bundles of money in stacks lining the case, just like in the movies. So it was a real bribe, or maybe it was a setup. I've never really found out. But I'm sure I'm not the first and won't be the last person offered a bribe to be mute or say the wrong thing or not say the right thing. Interesting that nutrition has got us to that point where we have to be bribed not to tell the truth.
It's really not that surprising that the food industry isn't looking out for our health. And even though certain people in the federal government really want to do the right thing, their voices aren't always heard. What about the local level? In New York City, Dr. Lynn Silver, the Department of Health, is giving it her all for the people of her city.
We are trying a series of approaches and working within city government to look at how we can have a coordinated approach to increasing access to healthy foods. One area we've been working in is our what we call the Bodega Initiative, where we just launched a campaign for them to stock fruits and vegetables, and we'll be trying to roll that out to about 1,000 bodegas in our poorest communities in New York City over the coming year and a half. I think it's a matter of making our society a place where it's easy to be healthy, to try and have environments that really help people stay healthy instead of making it harder for them.
Do you feel like the federal government is your ally in helping promote healthy diets?
Our work here is to try and promote health in New York City. I'd rather skip that. Okay.
Sometimes you see guidelines offered by national organizations, and these guidelines, in our opinion, don't go far enough, and oftentimes you hear the argument, well, if you go too far, people won't do it. And my issue is that people will do it if you tell them what needs to be done. You give them the choice rather than you're making the choice for them and you say they won't do it anyway.
The American Heart Association generally recommends a similar diet to people who do and don't have heart disease, with a little bit more stringency to those who already do.
The average cholesterol in America is 208. And since the average person dies of heart attack in America, being average in a country that most people die of heart attack isn't good.
When you recommend a cholesterol level of 200, where is the data that shows that you can arrest and reverse heart disease with a cholesterol of 200? It doesn't exist. William Castelli, who was the physician who directed the world-famous Framingham study.
Wait, back up a second. For 60 years, the Framingham Heart Study has been following over 10,000 citizens of Framingham, Massachusetts, to try and identify the causes of cardiovascular disease.
William Castelli said that of those patients in Framingham who were developing heart disease, 35% of the people with heart disease in Framingham developed it with a cholesterol reading between 150 and 200 milligrams per deciliter. 50 points below what the American Heart Association was recommending. So what they are literally recommending a level of cholesterol which guarantees that a third of the population will have heart disease.
So how bad is it when you don't get the right nutrition information? The McNamara's know firsthand.
In my family, there have been strokes and heart attacks and cancers and diabetes, and I don't want that. I would tell my brother about this, to eating the right way and what to eat, and he'd just laugh at me and say, hey, we're all going to die. We have to die of something. But he died. He died 3 years ago. He was suffering terribly, all because it started with his diabetes. That's what started his medical problems. It affected his heart, it affected his liver, it affected his kidneys, his feet. His feet were terrible. And the poor guy couldn't walk anymore, and his legs now were getting his skin was all dry, and the legs were necrotic. It was terrible. I mean, that would have been the next step, amputation, but he died before that happened. But he had a terrible death, and pain. He had so much pain, and that's when he finally said, I was right.
I realize probably with my husband's heart disease, he'll go before me. I don't plan it because I'm not thinking about it. It scares me because as much as I tell him that he runs my life and everything, I kind of like it because I trust his judgment, and I know no matter what predicament I'm in, and no matter how bad I might not have thought things through, I can always count on him to stop me and to say, are you sure that's... So I have no clue. I wouldn't have a clue how to go and how to continue.
Things have been very difficult over the last 6 months. I always knew that it was going to be very difficult.
I thought it would be a lot easier than it has been. In the beginning, everybody was rah-rah, including my friends and my family, but that fell off very quickly. I'm hanging out there on my own. They do have considerations for me. My husband will, if he's picking up food, ask me, what do I want, or he'll just go ahead and get the vegetables, but really, it's no one's checking or saying, how's it going, or let me prepare something for you. No, it's totally 100% me. In order for the plan to work, and I did see it working by the losing of the weight by just eating your vegetables and your fruits, is preparation and time. And I wasn't able to have that type of commitment unless it's critical or unless that there is a problem that's smacking you right in the face. Life gets in the way.
Life got in the way this time. But she says she's going to give it another try in the future. Good luck, Garnet. Remember those 24 patients? The ones that were told they didn't have more than a year to live because their heart disease was so bad? Well, 12 years go by, and guess what? They're not dead yet.
Of those original patients, there were 6 unable to be compliant. And I was on an absolutely bare-bones research budget. And so we had a mutual understanding. I returned them to their expert cardiologist. When we looked at the number of coronary events that those 18 patients who had stayed with me, how many coronary events had they had during the 8 years prior to coming on the study while they were under the care of expert cardiologists?
10? 4?
20?
They had had 49 coronary events.
49?
Over the next 12 years, 17 of those 18 had no further coronary events. One little sheep wandered from the flock after 6 years, went off, ate the wrong things, high cholesterol, more angina, bypass operation, now he's back with the flock. We often would have some rather striking examples of reversal. In this particular patient, here at the baseline, you can see this area of narrowing in the right coronary artery. And then, after a period of 5 years, if we look at the arrow at the same place, you can see that that area of plaque has largely, completely been removed. The body has metabolized away that fat deposition, and it has improved.
So everyone at the Cleveland Clinic must have been thrilled after Dr. Esselstyn showed that heart disease can be reversed with diet, right? Remember, they had 49 coronary events before the study, and only 1 after.
The chief executive officer sent me a letter when I showed him the angiograms showing reversal, that he was very supportive and very laudatory. The Department of Cardiology and Preventive Cardiology at that time were really being managed by people who had a greater interest in some of the procedural approach, the drug approach, and I just don't know that they felt that this was very practical in a larger setting, and I think there was some honest differences of opinion. I've been permitted to treat senior trustees at the Cleveland Clinic. I have treated senior staff physicians at the Cleveland Clinic, and I'm very optimistic that there will come a time when the arrest and reversal of heart disease through plant-based nutrition will be an option that can be offered to all patients.
Studies have shown that if you get very aggressive at lowering cholesterol, that you can, in fact, reverse the atherosclerotic process. Now, the question is, can you achieve that by diet alone? The answer is you can.
And I think all nutritional authorities recognize the American diet is disease-causing, and the recommendations from the USDA are governed by economic, political, and social concerns, who's the lobbyists and the political pressure. And you know, when we're getting recommendations by an organization like the government or the American Heart Association, you're always going to have to yield to political differences, and you're not going to get something just governed by science alone.
I think it is morally questionable for organizations to say, I know people will not do it, and therefore we withhold scientifically sound information.
We've got so far to go with respect to recommending dietary changes. People are so far from where we recommend with respect to lowering their caloric intake, exercising, lowering their fats, that I expect we will try to keep things modest for quite some time.
To not tell someone something because you don't think they're going to do it, that's really, it seems a little irresponsible, actually. Because maybe 1 out of 10 will do it, and it'll help them. You never know.
I would probably try the plant-based diet before going to the medication to see, I would give it a good try, a number of months, whatever the doctor would feel is necessary.
Oh, I think it's a great idea. It's get all your vitamins and iron and everything from plants and nuts and stuff, and I see nothing wrong with it.
Since publication in the American Journal of Cardiology, Dr. Esselstyn has started treating patients with heart disease from his home. He's treated hundreds of patients this way, including our old friends, John and Charles. It's been 3 years for Charles and 5 for John since they were told they needed surgery.
Well, when I started the diet, I was about 360 pounds. Changing and going on the diet, I lost 80 pounds. Seeing my blood pressure at 120/80, I was at my cardiologist about a month ago. He was the doctor that saw it at 250/150. He put the cuff on and just giggled. 120/80, there it is.
It used to be I couldn't really walk around the block without breathing hard. I took a walk the other day. It's not something I like to do, but I could have gone all day.
John's cholesterol went from 240 down to 140. Charles's went from 220 down to 124. Great job, guys.
I'll quote my cardiologist. I had a stress test a year after the one that put me into the angiogram and the recommended surgery, and the needles are going and everything, and he says, I'd be hard-pressed to find anything wrong with this heart. So I said, yeah, I got it. So that is good news.
As you grow older, do you have to always become obese? Absolutely not. As you grow older, do we always have to have this increasing rate of hypertension? Absolutely not. As we grow older, do you have to have this increasing rate of heart disease and stroke and diabetes? Absolutely not.
I had what many people say is the best the best doctor in Philadelphia for doing the operation. I said, I thank you for going through the operation with me a year or two ago. I never had the operation. I don't know if you remember me or not, but I went on a diet instead, and I'm doing all right now. And he says, when we do these operations, we put a Band-Aid on these people, and that's all it is. I mean, and it helps them for a while, and but it doesn't treat the disease. They have to do that themselves. And what else is new? I mean, I think that's the message.
At the same time that you diminish cardiovascular disease, you're also taking care of strokes. You're also taking care of fragility in the elderly. You're also eliminating a lot of dementia. And there's a host of other diseases that we haven't even begun to talk about, like obesity and hypertension and diabetes and the common Western cancers of breast, prostate, and colon, and a host of other things that appear to be related to this type of nutrition. So that I guess you can almost argue that, are there multiple chronic diseases, or is there truly only one which has multiple ways of expressing itself?
So these conditions all interrelate, which is why there's so much opportunity to prevent disease and promote health by focusing on just a few key behaviors.
What made me stick to it was very simple. It was my children. I mean, I do this for my own health now too, but I'm trying to break the cycle of cardiovascular disease in my family here. My children are about 70 to 80% on with this diet. We don't force it on them. If I can teach my children eating this way at this point, they may not have the struggle that the rest of us had.
It made him realize tomorrow might be gone. And I think he learned just to appreciate his family and life in itself a little bit more. And I know my kids absolutely gave him the will to push through and live and be healthy for them.
Where are you, buddy? All right. I am showering, and now let's see. Okay, let me see you guys. First day of school, Charles is in first grade, Francesca's in third.
I work today just like I have for the past 20 years.
Come out of there, you're going to be dirty. So I'm going to blow you off with the flow.
Stay on it, bud. Balance, that's it.
I got good that time.
All right, let's see it.
I hope for the future that we grow old and we're out in the field still arguing about who's going to bend over and pick up whatever we're doing. My hope is that my kids are healthy so that they don't go through what my husband and my father-in-law went through.
If you could have anything to eat for dinner tonight, what would you?
What would I have?
Yes, what would you have?
I have stuffed peppers, darling.
Yeah, okay.
With chili. Brown rice.
Brown rice.
And spinach.
With garlic.
With garlic.
I think that I'm going to eat this way for the rest of my life, and I'm going to teach my kids and wife that we should eat this way so my family can live longer.
Have yourself some nice whole grain cereals. A little bit of pasta, a whole grain bread. Now let's listen what the ducky says. A little bit of beans and legumes. Your mama always told you to eat those vegetables. Vegetables. Oh my dear, now don't forget the fruit. Tasty. Eating healthy makes a happy family. Come on a picnic with me. Off into the sunset.